Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Meet the Candidate, sponsored by WWDBTV and our Nevada judges. Today I've got a special guest. His name is Drew Johnson, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
Oh, good. I'm here on the right day then. Welcome, Drew. Thank you very much for coming in. So you're a candidate for the state treasurer.
Correct.
We'll get into that in a minute. First, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself? How did you get here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up in rural East Tennessee, in rural Appalachia, kind of close to where Dolly Parton is from. Mom who worked 2 jobs, lived in an old trailer, and I've sort of been able to live my American dream. I got really passionate after going to Russia in an exchange program right after the fall of communism. And saw, heard stories of people waiting in bread lines, and my dad was in a gulag, and 3 years ago we didn't have anything, and it made me really appreciate, even though I didn't have a lot, how much better life was in America than so many other places.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for a kid in high school to recognize not just the benefits of America, but also the blessings they have in their life.
I have said for years and years and years that when a kid turns about 13 or 14, we should pull them out of school, send them to another country,
Yeah.
and take their kids in, and so that they experience that. We're pretty lucky in this country, and too many people don't appreciate that.
Nothing makes you more patriotic than foreign travel.
Yeah,
That's
and that's one of the, I think, pluses of the military is you get to meet a lot of different people, and you get to experience different parts of the world. Anyway, so sorry for the interruption.
No, you're
More
so
about
fine.
you.
So when I went to college, I decided I wanted to focus on sort of promoting liberty and freedom and what was great about America. And so I went to college, went to grad school, and started working in free market, limited government, kind of conservative think tanks. And I really focused on tax and budget and finance policy. I became known as a government watchdog, and I worked on with Citizens Against Government Waste and National Taxpayers Union and these good government organizations on exposing corruption and wasteful spending. And I'm really proud. I'm credited for saving taxpayers about $60 billion by exposing corruption.
With a B?
With a B. With a B. So real money, working with lawmakers to eliminate some of the wasteful spending. I started a nonprofit that did a lot of school choice and has been able to put about 100,000 kids into better schools, which I'm very proud of. And then about
Let me ask you about that, the school voucher system. Doesn't that, in fact, take away from the public school system? Because you are taking money out of that system, and rather than trying to make the education system better for all, we're saying, okay, well, you can have this, you can have a better choice than these kids over here. And the reason that I bring that up is when I lived here as a kid, I went to elementary school here. I went to Fifth Street School. Mm-hmm. And when we moved back to California, education-wise, we were about 2 years ahead of the kids in California, here in Nevada. And I coasted for 2 years. And we don't have that now.
how things have changed, right?
Yes, and I think that hurts us big time.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, so this was in Tennessee, and the way it was done, I wrote some bills that we got passed. One is it allowed for open enrollment, so kids who were in a bad school district and could go to the next county or the next city district over, they could do that. Lombardo just actually passed that here in Nevada, which is, I think, a really great thing. The second thing is expanding charter schools, which were, there were only 12 charter schools in Tennessee when I wrote this bill. I think there are 140 now. And with what you were talking about with vouchers, the way they set up that system is it was just low-income kids in failing schools that could leave. But with vouchers, I think the thing that makes the most sense is like a 90-10-80-20 proposal where a kid can go to the school of his or her choice, the parent's choice, but some of that money stays behind for the school district, the school that they're leaving. But what ultimately the best thing you can have is competition. If a school is crap, then they need to know it, and they need to have some incentive of shaping up and doing better and providing a better service. And the best
But if you're taking money away from them, how can they do that?
So
I mean, I'm not an expert by any way, and that's why I'm asking these questions.
No. So the easy answer is that the district is paid 100% for a kid right now.
Right.
And so if that kid leaves, they no longer have to provide those services for the kid,
Right.
but they end up getting extra money anyway. So they actually end up having more money per pupil if they open it up that way. And one of the real fallacies in public policy is that more money equals a better education. And we've seen time and time, I've written a lot of these studies, read a lot of these studies, time and time again, we see that educational outcome has no relevance to per pupil spending. So that's one thing that we really need to change our mindset about, because kids can get a great education on, $4,000, $6,000 a year, and here in Nevada we're spending closer to $15,000, $18,000 a year depending on the county.
But that has nothing to do, I mean, most of that money goes to administration as opposed to the students. And the reason this is a kind of a sore subject for me is that we had a show on here called, basically it was a couple of elementary school teachers and talking about the experiences and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's criminal what's going on, because the kids are getting shortchanged all across the board.
Yeah.
And we need some kind of a forensic audit of our educational system here.
Yeah.
I mean, we got one of the biggest school districts in the country. And it just, if you can't pay your teachers, if you can't, attract good teachers, then, and by the charter schools and the private schools, they can afford those teachers. So we're shortchanging our public education system.
Keep in mind, though, that a lot of, when we're talking about, these private schools, you're thinking of Bishop Gorman and places like that are
Well, I mean, I live 5 minutes from here, and there are 6 private schools.
right.
And
a lot of those are $5,000 a year, $7,000,
Right.
much cheaper than it would be to
Right.
just go to a public school based on per pupil spending. And
but they have smaller class sizes,
Yeah.
and so they basically, it's like, if we both make the same amount of money, but I'm getting taxed more than you are, you've got more spendable cash. Anyway, I didn't mean to get us off on that, because we're totally off in left
there are
field
2
here now.
points. One that ties us back in. One issue is that when you mention forensic auditing, so in Nevada, we don't have a state auditor. We don't do forensic auditing. We have performance audits, and this goes to the school district level as well. And one of the real passions that drove me to run for treasurer is to make sure that we can audit the state properly, because we don't know where our money's going. In
Right.
2 other states, there are only about 8 or 9 states in America that don't have a state auditor. One of them is Minnesota, and one of them is California. And we know what's going on with some of the scams there, Medicaid fraud, school district things. So that's one thing I'm very passionate about, as I've been my whole career, making sure we know where our tax dollars are spent. The other thing you mentioned about teachers, I'm very passionate to make sure that good teachers are paid well. And I think you're exactly right about too much money going to administration. For some reason here in Nevada, and in CCSD in particular, we have a higher percentage of money going to administrative overhead than any other district.
Right.
And we've got to correct that. And the teachers here, we need to make sure that good teachers are paid what they're worth. And part of the problem is the educational industrial machine of Southern Nevada is they protect bad teachers and do more to make sure that those people aren't fired, and those people can do as little as possible and get by and get paid the same as a great teacher. And if you and I were in private enterprise, and one of us made a hell of a great hamburger and the other made a terrible one, we would figure out pretty quickly who was
Sure.
better, and we
Yeah.
would benefit. And that's one thing I'd love to see, is some sort of teacher incentive pay where great teachers here can make $150,000 a year, but crap teachers lose their jobs.
Yeah. So, do you get that? So now we're moving on.
Yeah.
So what made you decide, or what made you want to run for treasurer? Why that particular position and not the city council or
Yeah.
Senate or?
So a little background about how I sort of ended up here. I moved here with my wife about 13, 14 years ago now. And my thought was always, I'll give good lawmakers, good ideas. That's sort of, a policy wonk who tries to figure out how to solve the problems of
The power behind the
politics.
throne.
Yeah, basically, because a lot of politicians may be well known in the community, but may not have a policy background. So a lot of what I've done in my career, if you've met him and talked to him on this show, is trying to come up with ideas that hopefully will help make life a little bit better. And when I moved here, I realized that we sort of lack talent a little bit with politicians sometimes, and we need people who know what they're talking about. And so that's what drove me to throw my hat in the ring rather than just sort of expand my day job of writing columns and writing op-eds and policy papers. So I ran for Congress 2 years ago, and I was the Republican nominee in CD3, and I was the closest Republican in America to flipping a Democrat incumbent seat. So if one person out of 71 had voted differently, I would be in Congress right now. It kind of turns out, in a way, I think it's a blessing that I'm not, because when I lost, I did a little bit of work advising Doge because of my background, and I realized that the treasurer has more impact over people's lives here in Nevada than their congressman, because you can do things to protect state dollars, to track state dollars, to make sure that, going back to our education conversation, that our Millennium Scholarship and our 529s are done well so that kids can go to college. And I really became passionate about the idea of protecting tax dollars that way.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but so does the treasurer control the purse strings, or are you an accountant?
So the treasurer is basically an investor who also gets to track money, and then there's the treasurer and the controller work together. The treasurer brings in money, he invests it, and then he controls unclaimed property and the state's scholarship program, 529s, able accounts, things like that. And then he works with the controller, and we've got a hell of a great controller here in the state. His name's Andy Matthews. And Andy is the person who pays the money and has a transparency portal which lets you see where the dollars go. So my goal is to work with Andy to do this sort of forensic auditing, Doge, for lack of a better term, but that's a term that people understand.
Don't use that term.
Yeah, but where people understand that somebody is fighting to see how their dollars are spent, who's receiving, grants and things like that. And we haven't done a very good job of that. So
there's no accountability.
Exactly.
And that's what we're lacking.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. I wrote down questions. That's why I look over here so from your perspective, what are some of the misconceptions about the treasurers?
Yeah, I think we've got people in this race actually who think this. People think that the treasurer gets to day trade all day. Gets to, NVIDIA's hot today, I'm going to put all of our state money in that. It's actually illegal for the treasurer to invest in stocks. It's illegal for the treasurer to invest in...
You mean as the treasurer or as an individual who is in that position?
As the treasurer, but that's a good point, because obviously I ran against Susie Lee, who's kind of known for insider trading.
Right.
I will never trade stocks as the treasurer. I think that's an abuse of that power, so that's something I'm not interested in doing. But what the treasurer is actually investing in, very stable things where the return you're going to get, the sorts of things that a retiree might invest in here in Nevada, CDs, institutional paper, Fannie and Freddie, things like that.
Right.
I mean, treasury bonds. So you're not investing in things that are risky. You're investing in things that are very stable, because you want to make sure that money is growing and then liquid, so that you can again pass it off to the controller and he can pay the bills that are due.
So the one of the reasons that people were convinced to make cannabis legal in the state, to use cannabis, was that a lot of that money was going to go to the school districts.
Right.
None of it did.
So
is that part of the treasurer's job, or is that part of? I mean, do they have any influence there, or?
Yes, because the treasurer's tracking the money that's coming in. So
Right.
you have the ability to do reports and studies and things like that to follow the money. One of the real big problems with the cannabis issue is that we are not getting the revenues that we assumed, because when that bill was written, they wrote it so that there are so many regulations and the taxes are so high that in order to sell it, it's so much higher than the black market that I think a lot of people, I think if you're talking about medical and people
Right.
who don't want to get arrested
Right.
for stupid things are still above board, and it's gotten so expensive that a lot of those people aren't buying it. But a lot of people just say, well, I can meet a guy back behind the Dairy Queen and buy weed that way like you did 20 years ago.
I can grow my own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can grow your own.
But I mean, if I'm correct, the largest majority of that money actually went to the spaghetti bowl and the upgrades there.
I've heard that money was diverted. Of course, there's money that's supposed to be set aside for
Rainy
drug
day
rehab,
fund and
and different things like that. So that's a concern that almost every time I speak, somebody brings up cannabis, marijuana tax, and where's that money going? And a mix, I would say, I know that the revenues aren't what people projected because of bad policy. And the other thing is, I don't think the money is going where it was supposed to go.
Right.
And so that's one thing I'll certainly look into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's a perfect segue into the next question. What would you do different than the current guy?
Yeah, so the current treasurer is a Democrat named Zach Conine. He's running for Attorney General. The seat's open. And he's done overall a fairly good job. One of the things that he's blessed with is that you're basically as good of a treasurer as the interest rates you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you can park money in 4% instead of 2%, you look like a genius.
Yeah.
And he's been blessed with that, but he's done a fine job of filling the rainy day fund, which is maxed out right now, and things like that. There are two things that he's done that I would change.
Back up just a
Yeah.
second. When you say maxed out, are you talking about we've got all we can get, or we have used everything that's in there?
So the rainy day fund, by legislative restrictions, is maxed at, it's about $1.3 billion.
Right. So we
It's
are at that
completely
point.
full. It's completely full. And so there are some opportunities there with that overflow and being able to do like a gas tax holiday I'd like to see,
Right.
because we've got the money to fill it back up. But putting that aside, he's done a really nice job with unclaimed property. Is a big role for the treasurer. There's about $1 billion that comes from, somebody forgot they had a bank account, somebody opened a NV Energy account with a deposit, they moved, they forgot, there's a $150 deposit that's
Right.
required. So he's done a nice job of getting money back to businesses, and specifically businesses who donate to him. But he's done a pretty bad job of, if John has $80 due to him, reaching out to you. It's more hoping that maybe one day you'll happen to click on a link or see some PSA.
Yeah, there's, I get hit with those on my Facebook page
Yeah.
probably a couple times a month.
Right. So if
Do
you-
they owe you money?
Right. So if you're not clicking that, or somebody's not telling you to click it, you'll never know that you're owed
Yeah.
money. And so I want to make sure that we're reaching out to just people in Nevada and saying, hey, there's $200 here that you may not have known you had. If you can fill this out, we can get it back to you. And that's a real service that I think isn't being rendered.
Does that also include, okay, so I have no relatives, I have no family, and I die, and my house then goes to the state or the county
Exactly.
administrator?
That can happen.
Yeah.
They use it to pay off any debts you have, and all
Right.
that goes through probate. But some of that money oftentimes ends
Right.
up in unclaimed
Yeah,
property.
okay.
Yeah.
But and that's actually the job of the county administrator, right?
That's, let me get this
That's
right.
one of their
So
jobs.
that's
yeah.
one of their jobs, and then the money that comes after that sometimes goes to unclaimed property.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And then the other thing that he could really improve on is he plays a lot of politics with money, with investments. He says that he won't invest in funds that have anything to do with gun manufacturing. One of the Democrats running now said we're not going to invest in fossil fuels. The role of the treasurer is to get a good return safely on money and not play politics. I mean, I understand the desire. Of
But
people
is that politics or is that ethics?
I think it's politics.
Okay.
And you're talking about, you get to a point where you can't invest in anything because the funds that the treasurer is investing in, like in 529s, for example, there are these broad ETFs. And so our current treasurer got in a position where I'm not going to invest in any gun manufacturer, anybody who sells guns, or anybody who works with those people. And so, great, you can say I'm not investing in Ruger. But Rugers are sold at Tractor Supply or at Bass Pro or someplace like that. And then those places have MasterCards or Visa, store credit cards. And so you get where you're really putting yourself in a kind of a silly bind there.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I love this one. Why should people vote for you?
Yeah, so I have
Talk to the people.
people of Nevada. So
Listen up, this is important.
there's nobody better suited in this state to protect your hard-earned dollars than me. I've devoted my entire life to making sure that government spends your money well. And as treasurer, I'll even heighten that. I know how to get money back to you. One of the big goals of the treasurer should be to keep our bond rating high, our credit rating high, so that when we have to borrow money for infrastructure as a state, for these required expenditures for public safety, that we can do it as cheaply as possible. And that is a role that I can control. I can make sure that that bond rating, that credit rating stays high. And so that we're borrowing money cheaply, we're not having to increase taxes, we're not having to cut services. And if I can earn your vote, that's one commitment that I will make, is that government will be cheaper because of having me in office.
Okay. Where can people find out more information? What's your contact info if they want to contact you,
Yeah.
if they have more questions or whatever? You have a website?
Yeah, I got a website. It's
Okay.
drewfornevada.com. So that's all spelled out, FOR, state.
Oh, okay, not the number 4.
Not the number 4.
Okay.
Like the judges always do.
Yeah, everybody's different now.
Yeah, so drewfornevada.com. And I'd love to just go on there. You can see my personal cell number. You can see my email, and feel free to get in touch with me and ask any questions. The role of the treasurer is so important because it's not just impacting the treasurer. One thing I should have mentioned earlier when we were talking about
Please.
the day trading.
This is your shot.
So the treasurer doesn't make those decisions on his own or on her own. There's a 5-person panel who hires
Okay,
people.
that went back to one of my initial questions, is
Yeah.
that you are not making this decision by yourself in a vacuum.
Right.
Okay.
So there are a lot of safeguards put in place so that there isn't corruption, because we've had treasurers leave office in handcuffs before. And so
Mafia. We're Vegas, baby.
Exactly. But when you're making decisions about investments, about bond pricing, things like that, you're actually one of a 5-person board who then hires that out so that there are no conflicts of interest, so that things are on the up and up. And so people don't understand the role of the treasurer has more to do with protecting your money. Selling Nevada is a great place to be, and also making sure that people have faith in Nevada. And so that's much in running a 45-person operation, which I've done. I've, in my career, like you have, signed both sides of a check.
Yep.
And all that sort of stuff. And so you want somebody with some business experience and personnel experience, somebody who can run a 45-person operation and make sure they're executing the job well. And I think one of the real concerns I have is a few people in the race think that it is day trading and don't understand those sorts of responsibilities. I mean, you're running a state arts contest. You're running, as I mentioned, unclaimed property.
Yeah.
The Millennium Scholarship, which is what enables a lot of kids to go to in-state colleges here in Nevada, as you know. It greatly reduces the cost to our great students and tries to retain our best and brightest here in Nevada. That is running out of money and will be out of money in the next 2 or 3 years because it was based off of tobacco settlement money.
Right.
And so we have to have a treasurer who has a plan to replenish that fund. And I do have that plan. using unclaimed property as a trust and being able to fund with the interest off of that. So, those are the sorts of things that I'm really passionate about, making sure dollars are protected, that Millennium Scholarship is in place, and that people know that if they invest their time and energy in Nevada, that their tax dollars will be respected.
Great. We have just a couple minutes left, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to either be a hero or hang yourself with your family.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I understand that you have a pretty accomplished wife.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. My wife Sarah, she has a background in small business advocacy. So she's worked at National Federation of Independent Business and has run a business school in a university. And she actually ran an office here in the state for the lieutenant governors, the Office of Small Business Advocacy, and really helped businesses deal with some of the...
Didn't Lorraine, what's her name, start that when she was lieutenant governor?
No, but she did some great things to draw businesses here. She's an angel and has done so much for our community.
Okay, sorry.
No, this is a little newer than that, but it was actually crazy story. Sarah, my wife, came up with the idea for what Stavros, our current Lieutenant Governor Stavros Anthony, has promoted and done a great job with, which is protecting women's sports. And she came up with the idea for a task force that would ultimately it resulted in the state banning men competing in women's high school sports, which I think is a pretty common sense thing. It's sort of a 95% issue. And so the Democrats actually defunded her office because she did that on her own personal time, but as a sort of a way of getting retribution on that success. They defunded her position, eliminated her job and several other jobs as well. But she's just a hero to me, that she would take a stand, fight for our women here, our young female athletes,
right.
And knowing that she could potentially lose her job, which she did, but I'm damn proud of her, and she's a wonderful woman.
Well, good. Well, Drew, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yes, sir.
And coming in. I really appreciate it. And I know you hear this from me all the time, but please, when you vote, go all the way down the ballot. Every one of those people on the down ballot have more of an effect on your daily life than the people at the top. They're the judges, they're the police, they're the animal control, there's the school board, there's the treasurer, the county commissioner, the city council. They affect your daily life. Yeah. So please, I don't care who you vote for. Well, I do, but I don't care who you vote for. But please, do your duty. With freedom comes responsibility, and one of those responsibilities is get your ass out there and vote. Thank you. Drew, thank you very much.